Audio Jungle.
Hey guys, we're back and we're finally finished with our big discussion of divisibility and factors, and we're going to be moving on today to a really basic concept, and those are the basic operations. So probably you're asking yourself, what is an operation? An operation is a thing that we do with numbers. So operations are the things we do in math. So what kind of things do we do? There's actually lots of operations, but for now, most of us are familiar with the four most basic operations, and those are the ones we're going to be talking about today. The four basic operations, these are going to sound really familiar, I'm thinking, are addition, subtraction, I bet a bunch of you can finish this list for me already, multiplication, and division. So I already know some of y'all are thinking, why are we talking about this, Kate? This is really basic. This is third grade. I've known this for forever. I know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. A couple of reasons I want to talk about it. One, you guys struggle with word problems. Don't make like you don't. You all do. You tell me word problems are so hard. And I got to say that the main reason word problems are so hard is because you don't really understand these four basic operations at a fundamental level. So that's what we're going to look at today. So put up with me a little bit as I review some things you probably already know, but I add to your depth of knowledge. Okay, so in order to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you first need to know that that's what you're being told to do. Some of us have trouble distinguishing, so I'm going to run over the symbols and the terminology used in math to signify these four basic operations. Again, some of this stuff you're going to know, but just roll with me for a little bit. So the one and only symbol that we have for addition is our plus sign, and you guys can read that as plus. Probably pretty used to that, okay? And the other thing I wanted to tell you was the terminology. We don't just say it with a symbol, we also use a word in math. I can tell you to find the sum of two numbers, and that's another way to tell you to add, because the sum is the answer to an addition problem. So if I were to see this, most of us would read this as 6 plus 8, and that's perfectly acceptable. You can say that, but I could also call that the sum of 6 and 8. Okay? So now subtraction, again, I'm sure you're probably used to that minus sign. We read that as minus. The technical math word for a subtraction problem is the difference. The difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So, once again, I could read this as 8 minus 6, or I can read this as the difference between 8 and 6. The difference between 8 and 6. Okay? Similarly, there's the times symbol that you're all used to in multiplication. Okay? Looks like a little X on the ground. But this actually isn't the only symbol used to signify multiplication. There's a lot of different ways that mathematicians write about multiplication. I want you to know them all. So, the X isn't the only time symbol, okay? So, let me just erase this so I can get all the others in. Some other ways that we do it, if we're on a computer, we might use a star. So I need you to recognize if you see a star, I've also asked you to multiply, okay? Mathematicians will sometimes use dots. So be careful, if a dot is floating up in the sky, it means times. It's not a decimal point. So this is 5.6, but if that dot raises up into the middle, that's 5 times 6. Don't be confused, okay? And then finally, mathematicians will often use a combination of proximity and parentheses to mean multiplication. Let me show you what I mean. If you ever see a number shoved up against a number with only a parentheses in between, I'm asking you to multiply. This is 5 times 6. Parentheses mean to multiply. It could be that both the numbers are in parentheses. That's the same thing. 5 times 6 means exactly the same thing. Okay, and the answer to all these problems, no matter what symbol I use, the answer to a multiplication problem is called a product. A product. Now, this is probably one of the first things I've said that surprised you. For some reason, most of my students don't know this name. But just like I can ask you for a sum of 2 numbers, and I'm asking you to add, I can ask you for a product of 2 numbers. Okay? So, for example, if I asked you what is the product of 3 and 11, I would be asking you to multiply. So the product of 3 and 11 is 3 times 11, which is 33. Okay? Last guy is division. Like multiplication, there's a lot of different symbols that mean division. I'm sure you're probably used to this one. This sign reads divided by. And I'm going to put a lot of stress on the fact that it's divided by because order matters in division, and a lot of my students mess up the order. Okay, so divided by signifies a certain order. Okay, there's one more divided by sign, and that is a fraction bar. Whether it's written up and down, so like this, I could read that as 12/6, or I can quite literally read that as 12 divided by 6. And it doesn't matter if my fraction bar is horizontal or if it's slanted here, this still could be read as 12 divided by 6. Okay, so what about this guy that we're also used to? I bet he has a real name, but I always call him the division house. That's not his real name, guys. Okay, what does this symbol say? It does not say divided by. It actually is a divided into symbol. Divided into, well, what's the difference? The difference is the order. In this problem, 12 divided by 6, if I wanted to rewrite this using the division house, dividing into, it would flip the order. The first number, the guy who was, I'm going to write him here too. The first number, the guy who was being divided, would come into the division house. And the second number, the one that was originally dividing, comes outside, comes knocking on the door. So this says 6 into 12, or 6 divided into 12. If I wanted to say the words divided by, I'd have to read it backwards. It's the same as 12 divided by 6. Hope that made sense to you guys. And the answer to a division problem is called a quotient. So if I ask you to find the quotient of 126 and 6, I'm actually asking you to take 126 and divide by 6. And once again, if I needed to use that long division house, I would need to switch the order. The first number would come inside the house. The second number would come knocking. That's 6 into 126. And I will teach you to do this problem a little bit later. So I just wanted to talk to you really quick about what these operations mean before we learn how to do them. So what does it mean to add? I'm sure you've all heard the old word problem back in elementary school. Johnny has 3 candies and Tina has 7 candies. You know, Johnny has 3 candies. I shouldn't have said 7. Now I have to draw circles for forever. Is that 7? There we go. Okay. And Tina has 7 candies. How many candies do they have together. So notice I said that word together. I'm basically asking you to take all of her candies and all of his candies and dump them into one pile. And that's a perfect representation of what it means to add. To add, we're finding a total by just dumping a bunch of numbers together. Okay? So, finding a total and you're going to notice that I have finding a total here and I have no repetition here. That's because to add, Johnny and Tina, they don't need to have the same number of candies. It doesn't matter how many they have. If you remember, I said he had 3 and she had 7. And that, of course, would total 10. So, in elementary school, we first taught you how to add. That was the very first thing you learned. And then as soon as you were done with addition, we actually taught you what is called the inverse of addition. What's an inverse? An inverse is going backwards. So going backwards from addition is breaking back down that total that we found, and that's subtraction, okay? So subtraction, again, I want you to realize, is the inverse or opposite of addition. It's basically like doing the same thing but backwards. So in subtraction, I could take my total big pile of 10 candies and then I could reach in and grab a handful out. So you can imagine if I had 10 candies and I took away 7, now I get 3. So I use these same numbers because I want to point out to you that this subtraction problem, 10 minus 7 equals 3, is breaking down the same total as I had found in addition here. Notice my numbers. If 3 plus 7 equals 10, we're going to see the exact same numbers but going backwards. Then these are the same numbers, 3, 7, 10, but they're going backwards here. This time we start with that total that we had from before. We take out a piece. And we're left with the remaining piece. Remaining, I can spell. I'm a teacher. Okay, excellent. So, main thing I want you to see, addition, subtraction, same concept in opposite directions. Okay, so now, notice that I also have multiplication under finding a total. Multiplication is very similar to addition, but here's what happens. I want you to imagine that Johnny had 3 candies this time, so did Tina, so did Jake, so did Lisa, and so did Mike. So I could add up all these 5 numbers, 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, and I would get 15 if I did. But mathematicians are the laziest creatures on earth. We do not like the long way, we always like a shortcut. So basically, multiplication is a shortcut to add the same number over and over. So basically, I noticed that I added the same number 3 5 times. And so to write this same problem using multiplication, I would say that's 3 times 5, or the number 3 5 times. And of course, we have that one memorized as 15. If you don't have it memorized, go back and practice it in Quizlet, guys. You should know your 5 times tables. But what I want to point out to you is that multiplication is just repeated addition, or it's finding a total with repetition. Okay? Now, this is the one that stumps the most people. You guys get so confused about division. And so once again, I'd like to point out to you that multiplication and division are inverses. If you can multiply, then you can divide. So what is division? Once again, in division, I have a total already. I have a big number. Okay, I might have, you know what, instead of using a bar, let me use some dots. I like candies, you like candies, we all like candies. So let's start with our total of 15 candies. In division, what we do is everything is fair in division. We're going to share equally. So basically, we break things into equal size groups. So if I had the problem 15 divided by 3, I'd be asking you to take these 15 pieces and divide it into groups of 3. Then you just ask yourself, well, how many groups did I get? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. Okay? And so, again, similarly, in division, like subtraction, you must start with the total that you have, and then you break it in by either the number of pieces or the size of group to get the remaining number. And again, it could be number of pieces or size of group. Now hopefully I made these topics clearer instead of more confusing, but what I'm going to do in the next few videos is I'm going to teach you, if you don't know the algorithm, big word, but it just means step by step. If you don't know step by step how to do addition with larger numbers, or subtraction, multiplication, or division, join us in the next few videos. I'll teach addition in 1.5b. We'll do subtraction in 1.5c. We're going to do multiplication in 1.5d and division in 1.5e. That way, if you already know how to add really well, you can go ahead and skip that. If you just need some help with division, go straight to this video, and we'll see you there for a little bit of practice. Really quick before we move on, guys, I want to give you a chance to practice what we've learned today. So one of the things that we learned were the different mathematical terminologies that are used to mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So just a real quick reminder. Sum is when you add, difference is when you subtract, product is the answer when you multiply, and quotient is the answer when you divide. I always write them in this order so I don't forget. And I remember South Dakota and watch your P's and Q's. A little trick that helps me remember them. Okay, so if I ask you what is the product of 40 and 5, what am I asking you to do? I want you to choose the correct operation, and that's all you need to do for these problems. You just need to tell me what I'm supposed to do. You don't even need to do the work yet. So if I ask you what is the product of 40 and 5, the correct operation here would be multiply. Or multiplication. You know what, let's write it that way. What operation is this? Multiplication. Okay, gorgeous. If I asked you what is the difference between 40 and 5, well, what did we learn difference meant? Difference is subtraction. So what is the correct operation? It's subtraction. This problem asks what is the sum of 40 and 5. This is the one everybody knows. Sum is asking us to add. So this is addition. And finally, if I asked you what is the quotient of 40 and 5, quotient is our funny little guy with the Q, and that's our funny little operation, division. So what is the quotient is asking you to do some division. Okay, that's it. It's exactly how we'll write the answers when we do the practice in Quizlet. These problems you won't find too difficult either. Again, my directions here are to choose the correct operation. So you can cheer a little bit here. You don't need to do any math. All you need to be able to do is spell. Okay, so guys, just based on this symbol here, there's my little plus sign. So what operation am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to do addition. That says 270 plus 18. Great. Now, one of our new symbols that we had learned y'all might not be familiar with. We said when two numbers were shoved up next to each other with only a parentheses in between them, I was asking you to multiply. And so this says 270 times 18, and the correct operation is multiplication. Multiplication. On a side note, guys, if you do struggle with spelling like I do, I have some spelling issues. you've probably already noticed in my videos. There's a little button in Quizlet when you go to do your homework. If you just spell something wrong and it marks you wrong because of just your spelling, you can hit override, I was right, and then it'll give you back the credit for that question. So, side note, that's in Quizlet. Okay, so sorry, back to the homework. So if I see this over here, 270, now we usually read a fraction bar as over, but I taught you guys today you can also read a fraction bar as divided by. So this says 270 divided by 18. This is an example of division. Okay? Here's one nobody's going to think is too hard. We know that old faithful sign. There's the minus sign. So 270 minus 18, of course, that's subtraction. Subtraction. I'm getting humbled by my inability to spell. Okay, do you all remember what the little floating dot means? I feel like I'm playing Dora. Who remembers the floating dot? It's times. Okay, so what operation am I asking you to do here? I'm asking you to do multiplication. I know you guys are shouting back at your computers with me because math class is so much fun. Okay, how about the little star? Do you guys remember that that's another way to say times? Main reason we have this one is because of on the computer, on your computer keyboard, if you hit a star, you're asking me to times. So that's also multiplication. Okay. Now don't be fooled, just because I took a fraction bar and put it on its side, it still says the same thing. This fraction bar says can be read as divided by. So this is 270 divided by 18, so this is obviously division. And once again, we had said that if two numbers were shoved together and the only thing between them was parentheses, then we were talking about multiplication. I'm like rushing because I feel like this is the longest video already. Are you guys bored yet? We're almost done. So now here we read this problem a little different. This says 18 divided into, divided into 270, but it's still the same operation. So for your answer, you will still write division. Okay, guys, two more. We got this one. You probably don't need me to talk about that. That's the times sign, so this is obviously multiplication. This is the one we're used to. And once again, there's our simpler, probably the one we all know. That's a divided by sign. And so this is also division. Okay, guys, as usual, I want you to practice it. If we did it, now you should go and do it. I know it looks easy when I do it, but you're never going to remember it if you don't practice it. So go ahead and go to Quizlet. You guys should already be part of my math class, but if you're not, you can go ahead and search Kate's GED math class and join it, and you'll have access to every concept we learn in a video. We'll have practice there in Quizlet. So it will be video it's going to be practice set 1.5a in Quizlet called Choosing the Correct Operation. Go ahead, play with that for a little bit. And then, like I said, join us if you need a review on addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division in the next few videos.